Hey, good morning, folks. Cheers from beautiful downtown Bozeman, Montana. Hope you're having a good summer. I can't believe it's almost August. But I want to talk to you about something today that I find fascinating. And just so you know, you'll see me reading a little bit of stuff today. Usually, I just kind of ad lib and talk off the top of my head, but I'm going to be talking about some actual research today, and so I want to make sure I get the numbers right and also honor the people that did the research, because I find this stuff fascinating. So what I want to talk about is, especially if you're an older American, we did, we had carbon paper in school, right? We didn't even have fax machines or, none of this technology. And so if you're anything like me, it's not intuitive to, how we use some of this stuff and how fast the technology is progressing, how we actually interpret some of the things that, whether it's social media or mainstream media on TV or that kind of thing. I mean, when we were kids, there was the Walter Cronkites of the world that you could actually believe. I feel like there was more fairness, there was more just reporting the news, not, telling us what their opinions are or telling us what we should believe. And so I started looking into this a little deeper, and I found really, how it's crazy it is that our perception of reality is being so distorted by these newer sources of information, and how that information is actually being amplified. And so I just, the bottom line is, if you listen to all these, like, say, I'll refer to it all as one as media, but I'm talking about social media, all the different platforms, mainstream media, all the different channels on TV, all that kind of stuff. When I'm referring to that, I'm referring to all of those things, right? But when you listen to all that stuff, the main message I get, and I'm sure you do too, is that, oh, we're so divided, and there's so many problems with the United States these days, or, any country for that matter, and just humans in general. We're so, terrible, and no matter what we believe, we should feel bad, for the things that we believe. And the reality is, we are way less divided than we think. So there's a guy named Todd Rose that's done some amazing research on this. And so when we look at polls, I'm always skeptical of polls, because we've all seen how they can be skewed, and depending on who they polled and how they did it. But what he's done is pretty fascinating. He actually goes and sits down with the individuals, because when somebody calls, when a pollster calls, a lot of times your responses are going to be based upon, what if other people see my answer, hear my answer? I don't want them to think I'm racist or, bigot or whatever. And so they don't really tell the truth. But when he sits down with them, or somebody on his team sits down with them one-on-one in their house, they're very real. They're very honest and open about what they feel, because they know that their answers will be anonymous. And so he's getting information that's totally different from what we're all being fed. So this guy's name is, like I said, is Todd Rose. And what he calls this is the collective illusion. Okay, when millions of people privately believe one thing, but publicly act as if everyone believes something else. And that's really an important thing to understand when we're trying to get to the bottom of the story. What really is going on here? What's the purpose? What's the agenda of the person that's telling us this? Okay, so in reality, most Americans, and for that matter, most humans, just want the same things, right? We want, I like say, I'm going to read some of this stuff, because I don't want to be putting words into Todd Rose's mouth or misquoting him. But we all, when you make a list of things, we want safe communities, we want healthy families, good schools, economic opportunity, right? For us, the American dream: freedom, respect, purpose. You would be hard pressed to find any humans on this earth, individuals, except the few radicals, that don't they don't really, that's kind of what they're striving for. That's kind of what they're wanting. But there is differences about how to achieve these goals, right? I mean, there's no doubt about that. But one of the Todd's most striking statistics is that about 80% of social media content comes from 10% of the users. This is just research. This is not opinions. This is not, what I think. This is when he actually sits down with people and analyzes this data. And what the problem with that is, when 80% of the people are 80% of the social media contacts coming from 10% of the users, the problem with that is that everybody, including your brain, assumes that everybody thinks this, okay? But in reality, you're just hearing a tiny majority of people. And the problem is these algorithms reward these outliers and this outrage because it gets more clicks, it gets more views. And that has been true of, television, newspapers, forever. The catastrophe, the gory things, the things that get people's attention and get people reading their newspaper versus another one is when they sensationalize these things. So that's not new, but I think a lot of people don't realize that it's this, 80% of this content is just from 10% of the users. And the other thing, guys like me, and maybe you're smarter than I am, but I didn't understand this, is that there's so many bots out there. There's, and I see this, a lot of my posts get, 1 million views, and I'll start, sometimes I'll get comments and it's like, well, that doesn't really fit. That doesn't seem right. And I'll go in and look at who made the comment, and they don't have any friends. They don't have, they've got one picture on their profile, and for certain that that's just a bot. And the problem is, and I know this can be controversial to some people, and they think, oh, that's not true, but these other countries, China in particular, have a vested interest in dividing us. They can't beat us militarily. They can't beat us intellectually. And I'm not saying this to alarm people. I'm just saying this is a reality. There are other countries involved, especially around election time, that have these bots that try to become that 10% user that's getting 80% of the content, right? And if you engage with these bots, you're just asking for trouble, because then there are algorithms that our adversaries use to actually say, oh, this guy is a sucker, if you will. So you need to be really careful. That it's about a quarter of social media posts. This is what Todd's research showed. About a quarter of social media posts actually involve bots in one form or another. And obviously the percentage can vary depending on the platform, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever people are using. But as a general rule, the great majority of those, a quarter of the social media interactions are from bots. You just need to be aware of that, right? And even that quarter, even if it was smaller than that on a certain platform, even those can significantly, influence what people are thinking. Because here's the reality: your brain is kind of wired to be fooled, and that sounds kind of crazy, but it's absolutely true. If you think about it, we estimate what society thinks because those are shortcuts that our brain can use to save us some horsepower, if you will, because our brains are wired to ask, what am I hearing over and over? What's getting repeated over and over, instead of, what do most people actually believe? Okay, it's just the way our brains are wired. And that made sense when we lived in close communities and villages and wherever humans used to live before the last even 10 years, with all this blow up of information, right? It made more sense to kind of go along with the tribe. What am I hearing over and over, than to say, what do to sit down one-on-one and say, what do you actually believe. So, and so whether or not that makes sense, let me just give you a couple of examples of this just to kind of drive it home that may make more sense. And again, let me just read some of this stuff so I get it right. I don't want to be putting words in anybody's mouth. But here's one. Americans, the media narrative is Americans hate each other more than ever, right? We've heard that. I've seen, I'll bet you when you watch the evening news tonight, whichever channel you're on, you'll hear that's division. You know what Todd Rose's private polling says? Most Americans say they're willing to work with people who vote differently than they do, but share many of their core values. He argues that we often overestimate how extreme others are. That's when he sits down with people in their home face to face and asks them these questions honestly, knowing that they have autonomy. That's what we're not as divided as you think. Another example was everybody's becoming more extreme, right? We've all heard that. You know, there's and to some extent that's true. There are a lot of outliers, but what his research shows is that the most extreme voices are just the most visible online. They're not representative of the average American. So yes, there are possibly more extreme voices, but there's such an infinitesimally small number, but they get blown out of proportion in unbelievable ways. And we all, I think we all intuitively know that, but we question the validity of that because it just seems so outrageous that, you know, some of these things they say, again, they're just trying to get your attention. One more example would be, you know, that America is splitting into kind of two tribes and there's no way they can coexist. And what Rose found, people privately, they hold nuanced views, of course, a little bit, you know, and I've got friends like this that I love them to death. I'd do anything for them, but we have conversations and we can have, I love actually talking to people that have a different view than I do, because that's how I learn. I read books by people that I don't even like or I don't agree with because I want to know how other people think. So these privately, you know, held nuances, you know, but they don't express themselves because they fear social consequences or mistakenly think that they're in the minority. Okay, so people, regular folks like us, are not as vocal about our views because we don't want to be seen as, oh, you're the white supremacist or you're the racist or you're this the homophobe or any of that kind of stuff. And like I say, it couldn't be further from the truth. So, you know, when I would just ask you, when was the last time you just had a calm, respectful conversation with somebody else that's your friend, but you just want to know how they think? And oftentimes I write about this in my book, The Anti-Fragile Man, about something called epistemic humility. We've all heard, you know, the saying that, you know, you don't know what you don't know. But when you take that to the next level, you can't always believe what you think you know. Now let that sink in. You can't always believe what you think you know. And you all have examples of this in your life, whether you recognize it or not, but something that you truly believed in, you'd have fought tooth and nail for 10, 20 years ago. You look at that now and go, yeah, that wasn't really true. But it was just what you believed, what you were taught, and that didn't necessarily make it true. So it's the same thing here. If these bots and all these, you know, these 10%ers, their goal is to divide America and to make us think that we're further apart than we are, and make us think, you know, that we should hate each other and do that. It's a huge benefit to other groups, other countries in particular. It's a huge benefit to them to try and divide us because we are so strong. We are so powerful. I love the fact that all of my friends are strong, powerful men, but they understand peace through strength. They're the most peaceful people that you could be around. They have this sense of calm. They make other people feel calm just being in their presence. That's not because they're a sissy and they just go along with what everybody else thinks. It's because people can feel their energy because they're kind of the kind of person that does what they think is right, and not just to go along with the crowd. So one of the reasons all of this, to tie it together, that's one of the reasons that I started the Anti-Fragile Brotherhood, is because I know that there's men like me out there that have the same beliefs. They have the same drive to take what they've learned in their life, both bad and good, right? That's the definition of anti-fragile. You get knocked down, you embrace the chaos, and you get stronger as a result of that. You come back stronger, you come back with more wisdom. That's the whole definition of anti-fragile. And that's why I wanted to create this brotherhood that's got some just amazingly powerful people in it. Powerful in a way, not to kick your ass kind of powerful, but powerful because they've just got this calm strength about them, this calm wisdom about them. And the more we can take control of this narrative from at the grassroots level, I'm not talking about a KKK or Antifa or anything like that. I'm just talking about a group of just really damn good men, a group of really powerful men that are using their power for good, to inspire and help the next generation, to help other people, to help people that are maybe less fortunate, and to share their gifts with other people. That's what the Anti-Fragile Brotherhood is about. And so the more, and I don't join our brotherhood, create your own, whatever, it doesn't matter to me, but we need more grassroots organizations like this that just say, okay, enough is enough. We're not as divided as people would like us to think. We're not as weak as people would like us to think. I mean, I see some of these people, saying, oh, well, you don't want to mess with me. Well, trust me, if you knew the guys that I know, they would not say that to their face, right? They would feel the power of this group, not in an intimidating way, but in a, these guys, they're good men. They're strong, powerful men who stand up for what's right. They stand up for the underdog, not just to squash everybody else, but to take care of maybe people less fortunate, and to also set the example for younger men. That's what the Anti-Fragile Brotherhood is about. And like I say, if you resonate with that and you want to become a part of that, we're doing some amazing things. There's some amazing men in here. It's growing by the day. It's by invite only. You get vetted pretty good to decide whether, because this is a curated group of just really good men. It's not fly-by-nighters. It's not people that blow V8 and tell you how good they are. They're just good men. If you're searching for a group like that, and I know a lot of people are, because I coach a lot of men one-on-one, and I wouldn't even say almost, I would say all of them want to take what they've learned, their lessons, and share them with other people, especially when you get into that last third of your life. That's a big part of what older men want, is legacy. There's no better place to do it, and there is strength in numbers. So if you want to be considered for our brotherhood, just send me a message, just comment brotherhood, and we can have a one-on-one conversation whether this is the right group for you. And if it's not the right group for you, go find a similar group or go create your own group, because we need more good men. And we have a group of women that are doing the same thing, right? It's not just about men, but I can speak to the things that men struggle with and the things that men can share with the younger men coming up. And so that's why we've created that. We've got our annual rendezvous starting August 28th through the 30th here in Montana. It's going to be an amazing event. It's powerful. That's the only way to describe it, is you come back, you come out of that a different person than you entered that. And also the community of like-minded people that you have access to, that everybody has their own gifts. It's extremely powerful. But I would just encourage you, in summary, to recap, to understand that we're not as divided as these people and these outlets are trying to make us. That's not who we are. That's not what reality shows. But you've got to understand these things. You've got to be more sophisticated about the information that you consume, and you have to seek out differing opinions, because maybe there's something that you believe that's not really true or doesn't serve you the best. So I hope that makes sense today. I appreciate everybody listening, and if you have any comments, certainly reach out. Again, I get better because I'm open to suggestions, and I'm open to differing opinions. That's how I get better. So I get as much out of this as all of you do. So thank you for all the people that help me become a better person. So take care and make it a great day.